Hey there, Business for Unicorns podcast listeners. This is Mark, and I'm here to tell you about an awesome free resource on businessforunicorns.com. If you ever find yourself feeling frustrated with your training gym because you know that there are all sorts of things you could work on, but you're not really sure how to prioritize, you don't know what's the most important thing to work on or what order you should be tackling your priorities, well, now is the time to go to businessforunicorns.com, click the button, and fill out our free self-assessment. With the Ultimate Training Gym Owner Report Card, you will gain immediate clarity on just where to be focusing your attention to create more positive impact on your community, to drive more revenue and take home income, and to do it all with less stress and more peace of mind. So go to businessofunicorns.com, click the button, fill out that free self-assessment, and start building a business and life you love today. All right there, Business for Unicorns podcast listeners. This is another first. It's an exciting opportunity. I am doing my very first interview ever on the Business for Unicorns podcast, and I couldn't be more excited about this guest that I have with you today, Scott Rammage from VAs for Gyms. I want to give a little bit of context before I ask Scott to explain more about himself. And the context is I demanded that Scott come on this podcast and explain more about their business, because without being hyperbolic, it's one of the best additions we've made to Mark Fisher Fitness this past year. It's been just an incredibly valuable resource to finally have a really great solution to augment our capacity with some virtual assistants. We have tried many things similar in the past that did not go as well. And longtime followers of Biz for Unicorns will know that we don't make a lot of very direct recommendations for vendors. And part of it is, beloved listener, I am so committed to you having an amazing experience that frankly, sometimes I get a little bit nervous because my personal desire to be liked by you, I would feel terrible if I sent you to somewhere and didn't have an awesome experience. But after several months of working with Scott's amazing organization, I'm really thrilled to introduce not only VAs for gyms, but I think on a more broader principle-based conversation, a little bit more discussion about ways that train gym owners that are always pressed for time can expand their capacity, can get more done, create greater impact on their communities, create more revenue, and importantly, have more time for themselves, for their family, and their other pursuits. So with that said, Scott, welcome. Great to have you here on the Biz for Unicorns podcast.
Thank you, man. You hit like so many passion points of mine. It's crazy. I am so happy to be here because I do have a passion to see business owners, gym owners in particular, like reduce their own load and be able to have the energy to do the things that they love and that they're really good at. So I love sharing this message.
Amazing. Amazing. So, Scott, I will ask you the obligatory podcast. How did you get into this, Scott? But before we share your story, I would love to, or unless you think it's appropriate to start with that, I would love to make sure. Yeah, I want listeners to really understand in your words, how would you describe the service of VAs for gyms? What is the actual deliverables that people get when they work with you?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we're a little different than the typical VA service where you come in and they match a virtual assistant to you, and that virtual assistant then learns your business and learns what you want to do, and you assign things and they do it. We're different because I found that as a fallible a fallible way of doing business a lot of times. So what we do is we offer an entire team of virtual professionals with a project manager for each business. So what we do is we have solutions that basically we can do almost anything that doesn't require eyeball to eyeball interaction, which is a beautiful thing because really when you think about a gym owner or manager's real superpowers, it's that human connection. And we really don't want them being bogged down with running reports and all the other operations that occur. But really what we do is we have just a myriad of solutions for you, plug and play, where we have a lot of SOPs that have been developed over time. So our clients can come in, look at the list of SOPs. It's almost like a menu. I want this done. I want this done. I want this done. And then we change it to fit into the model. And then we learn and execute. And this goes from Facebook or social media management, content creation, running reports, doing all the things that gym owners know they should do, but just never find the
Right.
time or the right person to do, right? Updating my Google business every single week, if not more than once a week. Managing emails, taking cancellations so that we don't have to worry about all that stress that goes along with that. The list goes on and on and on. Basically, your imagination is where we go. We do website updates, uh, landing pages, funnels, all of the stuff that can cost a lot of money and really takes a professional. And what we've done is we've just wrapped all of this into one service. So when a client comes in, it's like, do you want, can you do this? The question is, or the answer is either yes, we already know how, or show us once and we'll make it an SOP and perform it every time for you. So,
Love it.
and myself and my business partner, Josh, I'm a past gym owner. Josh is a current gym owner. We've been in the fitness industry for years and years and years. And our own desire to create time for ourselves and the problems that we had with our own lives, where, marriages were in trouble, relationships in trouble, not being a parent or, a family member that you want to be, was just a normal thing as an entrepreneur. And so we're really passionate about kind of helping people step out of that and leverage like the ultimate business hack. It's leveraging other people.
Yeah, I love this. So amazingly, I think you got through both of the questions, which is what is VAs for Gym? What do you do? And then I think a little bit about how you got into it. And I'm curious to hear, Scott, because to me, this seems such an obvious thing to do. And I can see context, as most listeners know, MFF is a little bit of a machine. We're a little bit of a larger organization where
Yep.
it's perhaps a little bit more painfully obvious that if I can get some more capacity and really offset what my in-person team is doing, I'm going to be reaching for that all day long. I'm curious to hear, what is it, do you think, that gets in people's way that prevents them from increasing their capacity through using a service like VAs for Gyms?
Man, it's the same thing that got in my way for years. So it's the fact that typically when you are a small business owner, you've bootstrapped everything. So I created every system for my gym. I hired every person for my gym. If it was done, I had done it before. I'd cleaned the place. I knew how to open, turn on the music. I developed everything. And I think when you start that way, there's something inside of you that just, that's how I succeed. I've gotten to this point doing that. I just continue. And that's why so often when, you hire someone, there's a lot of frustration and tension because they're not doing it exactly how you want. And then the biggest thing I see, Mark, is the fact that so many gyms try to put things on. People usually come in to work for a gym because they're passionate about fitness or passionate about coaching or personal training or nutrition. And then they're like, well, I need more hours. And so instead of like, what can we do to get you more hours doing what you love? They're like, well, hey, why don't you manage my social media? Or would you run reports for me or work the front desk or whatever it is? And then we get this dissonance that's happening where I love this part of the job. I don't love this part of the job. So we're trying to mismatch this thing. And we're putting these people that aren't working within their geniuses into these seats. And there's just a bunch of friction that happens. And as an owner, you're like, they're not doing it right. They just can't do it right.
Right.
No one can do it right as me. So I was that guy. That did everything. And 3 years ago, I had somebody I was doing contract work for, and he taught me the importance of personal systems, having a personal operating system and productivity. And so I became like a student of his and became a productivity nerd. And what happened is working for him, I became so productive, but I didn't change my habits. And I think business owners do this all the time. They like, well, I can just make it faster and I can do it more. What do? They keep filling the time with more work and they keep filling more and more and more of those seats. So I'm here working 80 hours a week for someone else. I turn around and I become super productive. And now I'm working 80 hours a week for someone else, doing about 200 hours a week of work. And what this is kind of back to the question from before is I knew about virtual assistants, but everybody told me it wouldn't work. And I'm like, why not? So I just started interviewing people that I knew that had VAs, started interviewing people, started reading blogs, started doing all this research. And what I found is there's some major things. One of them is the fact that one person can't do everything. And then most people don't have full-time work for just one, like an assistant or just an editor or just a content creator. And they're like, well, I can't pay him full-time. So what happens is that
Mhm.
person then goes and finds more work. So by the time you're working with them, they might have 5 or 6 other clients. And who knows what order you're being put in work productivity. And so you get sick of it, you fire them, and you're back to
Right,
doing it
right,
yourself.
right.
And so I've studied all this and I'm like, okay, so I hired my first virtual assistant. I found it, actually, I called her a unicorn. She's very good. She learned things. I learned how to walk her through what I was doing and trained her how to do it. And I created systems around that because I was into this system thing. And I relieved about 40 hours a week of work off of my own. I started a podcast. So all of that was being produced. Everything was getting done. I was running a big Facebook group that was being taken care of. And I'm like, wow, this is amazing. So I hired another one and then I hired another one. And gym owners started saying, because I was running a few gym owner masterminds, and they're like, how are you doing this? And this is where this was all born.
Right.
And we just kind of solved this problem. But it wasn't until I found someone else who could plug into the amount of productivity I wanted to get done and do it that I found freedom in my own life. And I went from working 80 hours a week to a normal person's 40 hours a week.
Right, right.
And I'm like, ding, ding, ding. This is what I've been doing wrong my entire life. And other people must have this.
Yeah,
So
no, well said.
I hope I answered your original
Yeah,
question.
no,
I
I
got
think you
going
did.
there.
I think you did. Like every podcast host, I'm trying to coach myself. Like, why don't I do more of these things? One thing, and I wonder if you can speak to this, Scott. One thing that has been interesting in our experience at MFF, and I imagine maybe something some of your clients are running into as well. And I'm wondering if you could speak to. I have my thoughts on how to handle this, but I want to get your take on this. When the team is resistant, because that's the thing I've noticed a little bit about MFF is one thing that's been interesting is a lot of our, and keep in mind at MFF, I'm very explicit. I at least try to sell everybody like, I'm not doing this so I can move you all to part time. I'm not going to be reducing your pay. I just want you to do the things that are more interesting, the things that are more high touch. I want you to engage with our ninjas in a way that are meaningful, that require your creativity, your spontaneity. And sometimes I must confess still, when I run into an SOP that I'm asking to become outsourced, the initial response is like, oh, well, that one, it can't be outsourced. It requires there's no way to outsource. And of course, like when you unpack, well, if it can't be outsourced, then how is anybody else ever able to be trained to do it if it
Right.
all exists in sort of creativity in the moment? So I'm wondering what counsel you would give gym owners. Let's say somebody signs up, they're ready to go, they talk to their team, they're excited to get some things off their plate, and their team is like, "No, boss, you just don't get it. This is there's no way this can be outsourced." How would
Yeah.
you coach that gym owner?
And I'm glad you brought this up because it's so typical. It's literally 80% of the resistance that we hit. And first of all, I kind of want to answer a question that you may or may not ask, but is like, how do I get somebody offline somewhere else to like portray our culture and our what it's like being here because we're different. And that's one of the things that a lot of staff will say is like, no one else can do this. They don't understand us. And that's part of the system that we built is how do we get to really know who a gym is, what their culture is, what their avatar is, what's what's their messaging, what's their delivery. So we've worked that out. But really, it really comes down to those conversations, just as you said, is like, look, I value you for the face-to-face stuff. I value you for the training. I value you for the things that somebody else cannot do in no way. This is actually something that someone can do. If it's an SOP and it doesn't require face-to-face, it is absolutely replicatable by someone else. Not that's not you. I think you hit the nail on the head. I'm still going to give you the hours. You're still going to make the
Right.
money. But I know that I know that I know that you are really good at X, Y, and Z. And maybe you ask before you say, what's your favorite thing to do? And if you do more of that, if you do more of just talking to the clients,
Hmm.
if you do more of touching them in a personal way, you're adding so much value because that is probably the best retention tool you can use is the personal connection. So your value is 100x what you're asking to keep doing. So are you good at this? Yes. But I want to get the most out of you, and I want you to get the most out of what you're doing. How do I do that? Is I put you in a role where you are working your genius. And another thing is just acknowledging, look, I know maybe they're an hourly, maybe they're salary, and they have like an expected amount of hours. If you are maybe in that role, manager role, and you take a bunch of the admin tasks away from them, what are they going to do? They are literally going to act like a mayor in your gym. They're going to shake hands, kiss babies, just treat your clients like they are the best thing in the world, the most important thing in the world. Take a moment to greet them when they come in, have a chat on the way out, and tell them, I value that just as much as that report getting done, because they might see an actual product being part of their value, where you need to explain to them, your value is something that is really not tangible through an actual task. It's this. And so I think there's just a communication and changing their mindset about what their real value is, as opposed to what their perceived value is. And that might be output, because that's in the world, we expect output. We expect a product to come back, where in this world, keeping customers and creating, I don't know what you call them, like a raving fan, they're going to go tell other people about your facility. They're going to go tell other people about your training. They are your best marketing plan. So really you become a master marketer if you can really connect to your clients.
Yeah, I love that. That's all well said. And it's an interesting distinction too, that part of the barrier might just be if they're used to creating some kind of deliverable that's maybe not a physical one, but even, for instance, a thing that for years has been a pain point for Mark Fisher Fitness and for me personally, is my team, which I love, which I'm happy to pay New York City salaries, spending endless amounts of times pulling out all these different data from all these unfortunately massive number of different software platforms we use, so I can have a centrally located master dashboard and I can really see what's going on in the business. And that is such an easy thing to, in theory, automate. And it was a thing that when we first started working, and it's been kind of satisfying actually, because a quick experience share for anyone listening to this and considering it, before we started working with VAs for gyms, it was widely believed as a consensus for the team that there's virtually nothing we can outsource. There's virtually nothing that we can hand off. It's all so important. And it's been satisfying actually, month by month, week by week. We keep pushing through that, I think, and breaking those probably unhelpful beliefs. But if you're thinking through this, another heuristic that I've used as we look to outsource things are, if it's a thing that in theory you're an amazing tech developer and you could make almost any technological solution to automate virtually anything in your business, that's kind of what this is. But the difference is you don't need to develop a tech solution. Right. You just need to share the SOP. So one other thing I'd love for you to speak about, Scott, which I love, and I think is so awesome, because I can see maybe individuals being nervous about, maybe they understand this theoretically, but they're asking themselves, well, okay, but what if I'm not good at making SOPs? How do I make SOPs? Can you tell a little bit about what that process looks like? Because this now feels so dumb, but was very important for me to be like, oh.
Yeah, I learned this from somebody else. And man, when I brought this to this business, people are like, what? Because so many facilities don't have SOPs because they don't know how to write them. They're like my belief is if you're running a business, someone from the street should be able to walk in, open a book, and see something and perform it exactly how it should be performed. So like my example here is, if someone is coming in to clean the business, you want them to come in and you don't want to have to show them around. I mean, it should literally be that in depth. This is where you walk first. This is what you do second, like a literal step by step. So how do we create SOPs? We have you film it. If it's a physical thing in the gym, and we've done this for many gyms, like, look, they're like, man, I hire someone to clean and then they quit and then I have to retrain somebody. I'm like, why? Like, just walk around, take one time, walk around like you're going to clean the gym and film it and just talk just with your phone. It can be on selfie or forward. Hey, and this is the mop bucket and this is where this goes. And this is how you turn on the water. Do that. It'll take you 30 minutes. Send that video to us and we will have a step-by-step SOP created for you, branded for you. It belongs to you. It'll be in our files. It'll be in your files, and you will never train someone to clean the gym again. And they're like, oh my gosh. I'm like, yeah, do it for the opening, like where to turn on the music, what music to turn on, how to get your POS system set up. Like, you should never tell anybody how to do that stuff again. Do it once, record it, send it to us. Now, it's a physical explanation. We are masters at SOP writing. So the next thing is get a system like Loom, like a screen recording system,
Mm-hmm.
and just do the thing one more time. I mean, this can be payroll. It can be calculating hours. It can be calculating pay. It can be bookkeeping, minor bookkeeping, be running reports. Yeah, but they don't understand. I got to log in here, and then I got to log in there, and I got to log in there. I'm like, it doesn't matter if they don't understand it now. Literally record yourself doing it if you've done it before, and then send it to us. We will write a complete SOP. So even if you don't use us in the future, it's ready for you. It's done. You don't have to train on it again until the system changes.
Right.
But even more beautifully is a bunch of the stuff I didn't know how to do and I didn't want to take the time to do.
Right. Right.
It's like, and I'll say, hey, look, I got this new system and it watches all our clients, and it's got all the lead funnel and everything. Would you just go learn all this stuff about it and write SOPs and send them to me? And they do the research, and I'm like, okay, start doing it. That looks perfect. And so SOPs they're no longer on my list. I call it a one and done. Record it once,
Mm-hmm.
send it off, and you're probably off to the races from there on out.
That's fantastic. And I have to say, that really brings to mind, I don't think we've really scratched the surface of asking the VAs to go learn a thing that we don't know how to do and then create SOPs for us.
They love it.
Yeah,
They
that's fantastic.
absolutely love it. I mean, you brought up something earlier. It's a dashboard. I don't know how much time, and I did the research. I had my VAs do research. I need a great dashboard for all our business stuff. And we just spent so much time, going through sales calls and going through the demos and doing webinars. I'm like, I don't like any of these. They're not tying this and they're not tying that. And finally, I'm like, you know what? We're going to hire a spreadsheet specialist. And right now we have the best dashboard I have ever seen in any corporation or company I've ever worked for.
Mm.
And it was built by our team because I'm like, I know exactly what I need. Why am I paying someone else to do that? I'm just going to have somebody do it. And I mean, and that's the beauty. It's like, you need to, like, the complexity of these spreadsheets blows my mind. And what I've learned is, like, I've always thought I have to learn it and then do it myself. And I said, wait, I don't need to learn it anymore. I do not need to be the master of or nothing, and being able to do a little bit of everything. So for us, it's like, and for our clients, if there's something you don't know how to do, ask. If we don't know how to do it, and someone is out there that is kind of specializing in that zone, they'll go do it. It's just, it's just it's a magic. It is the ultimate productivity hack that exists out there.
It's so amazing. If anything, one of the things that, is interesting that I think on our end, we can still do better is intentionally circling back to look for other things that either A, we're currently doing, but could have VAs for gyms handle for us, or B, other things that we might like to do that in themselves might never rise to the level of priority for our existing team. Because it seems to me those are kind of the two buckets, right? There's the things you're already doing that are tedious or not, but at the very least could be automated. You could have someone else do. And then there's a whole other bucket of things that you're not doing at all. But if you had time, if now you have all this extra capacity, would sure be nice to do. And I think most organizations, you can't ever get to the bottom of all the things you'd like to do, right? So you always have this list of things you're never gonna get around to. And then of course, there's things you never even would have thought to do. So the other thing too, and dear listener, I want to acknowledge, I hope I'm not coming across like a show. This is just like an honest enthusiasm because I'm so wound up about the service. The other thing that's so cool to me is all these, can you tell us a little bit more about examples of and more about the plug and play SOPs that you have that you can offer?
Yeah, I think I alluded to some of them already, but even what are the two most, the biggest SEO engines in the world? Google and YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
So like even one of the very first, we tell people, are you updating your Google My Business? And they're like, yeah. How often? A couple times a month. I'm like, 3 times a week. So one of our plug and play SOPs is Google My Business 3 times a week. We're going to put in content. We're going to put in videos. We're going to put in this stuff because it's all a game to be that first hit on that Google listing. You've got to be a great hit on that Google listing. And then also taking testimonials you'll have. You probably have testimonials and creating pieces and putting them in there because people's eyes go to that Google listing. So that's one of them. YouTube, we have a whole system. We have a system. There's some plug and plays that go into this system. And that is getting any type of video, whether it's your selfie video where you're walking around with your phone, filming yourself and talking about something that you're really passionate about that speaks to your avatar, or maybe you record something going on in your gym or interview someone just even unofficially. It's not like an official podcast or anything. Send it to us and we can take that and make massive content out of it. Like one recording can give you 15 to 20 pieces of very good social media content. A podcast, for instance, I've helped over 20 gym owners create podcasts. That is a social media like factory. I mean, we're creating content for them, and all that does is populates their My Google business, their Facebook, their Instagram. And what's going to happen when someone goes to Mark Fisher Fitness and they see very relevant things that they care about, because that's what you're going to be talking about in there, and it's speaking exactly to your avatar? Or are they going to go to the place that just has pictures of people lifting weights and looking, fit? They're going to go to the place that speaks to them. They're going to go to the place that's actually created content that's authentic and what they love. And so those are some of the things that we really can bring massive value in right away, as well as all sorts of reports, like reporting. So many people don't do reports. They know they should. Yes. And instead of like, oh yeah, every week I have this report pulled, and we all know how it is. You assign that to someone and sometimes it gets done and sometimes it doesn't. You wake up, it's in your inbox, and you may or may not use it, but it's always there. And searching for data, task switching is an absolute crusher of productivity. And so if you can get all those tasks off you or your staff's plate, you're increasing their productivity by up to 80%. And that means they're going to do more for you. You're going to do more for you. Your business is going to thrive. So kind of spoke to your question. I think we're in the 30 or 40 plug and play SOPs that we have, and we have hundreds of SOPs. Some of them just aren't as like plug and play because we got to do a little more tweaking to them.
Sure. Yeah. The podcast one strikes me as one that is very powerful. And it's interesting because in a vacuum, there is definitely, I think, some debate about the relative merits of a podcast for a brick and mortar training gym in and of itself. But what strikes me about this SOP that's so powerful is it's really not just the podcast. You're essentially doing what anybody that's a nerdy Gary Vaynerchuk fan is: take the one piece of content and then make billions of pieces out of it, right? Yep. And that is a challenge that many people run into, right? So a lot of people that listen to this, and a lot of people who work in Business for Unicorns, if you are the owner operator of a more independent training gym, you understand that from a marketing perspective, you need to be creating content that is informing and educating and inspiring, and it can feel like a slog. And particularly, one of the challenges I think about running a training gym is there is this gnarly inflection point, I think, where if you have enough success, you find yourself in this difficult, almost chicken or the egg kind of moment where you need more things happening on the acquisition side, and you need to keep up with the things that are happening on the fulfillment side, but you're maybe not ready to make that leap and bring on another full-time team member to get some of these things off your plate. And it just seems like the VAs for Gym is just an amazing potential solution because you get the full force of essentially a full-time person for a fraction of the price. And not only that, but unlike a full-time person, if you hire somebody that is not as adept as many of these professional virtual assistants are, you honestly can't train them as easily, because when you hire this wonderful, well-intentioned person that you're ready to commit to, good luck giving them a video of you doing the thing and them turning it into SOP. It's going to require a lot more trial and error on your part.
Yeah.
So, the joke is, people are always asking, what's the first hire, right? Is my first hire going to be, is it the admin, or is the first hire another trainer? Well, it's probably VAs for gyms.
Well, I think one of the biggest pain points that people don't realize and don't think about, that we kind of solve, is the hire, train, manage, pay, replace, and fire roles, right? How much energy does it take you to hire and then train and then manage and then replace if they leave and start over again? It's a ton of energy. So the way we've solved that is we do all the hiring. We create epic SOPs so that when somebody leaves, we just had one of our admins have a baby, boom, just goes to someone else. All the SOPs are in place. So you wouldn't even know. Like you wouldn't even know. Your manager's connecting with your project manager's connecting with you. Hey, here, this is done. And asking you questions if you need for clarification. But now that entire headache is off your plate. Now, I'm not saying replacing staff with this is the best thing. I'm saying as you have new things, or someone leaves, it's a great opportunity. It's a great opportunity to take on for anybody, because what we talked about earlier is like having people work in their genius, which is so underutilized in our world. So, but it's that friction that occurs for an owner or manager having to continually rehire. And then payroll, it's one less person on payroll. We take care of that. And that's just, and then the taxes that come along with that, all the things that stack up. You might have if it's hourly, it might be $20-$30 an hour, but when it's said and done, it's more than $30 an hour. It's like 38, 39 because of taxes and everything else. And so you're just literally flatlining that into a flat rate. And then all the work of the hiring and training is taken care of on our end.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And it's so valuable too, because certainly if anybody listening, by all means, you run your business, you should make your own decisions. I could see potentially someone listening aside like, all right, well, I like the system overall. Well, I'll go and find my own VAs. And honestly, that could be a totally awesome thing for you to do if you have the interest in the skill set. I will share, I have been keen on this for many years, ever since I read, what is it, Virtual Freedom? Is that the book, the Chris Drucker? Yeah. So ever since I discovered this, we've worked with people on and off. We've always run into these exact issues, which is when you're the one that is directly managing them. What's great about this service is the VAs you're working with are managed by other people who are managed by other people that then you get to have conversations with. Makes for a lot of continuity of service. And as a business owner, one less thing I have to worry about. Yeah. Now, I'm going to give one final thought here, a little bit of coaching to our listeners. And then, Scott, I'd love to hear anything else you want to share. Is I suspect the issue that a lot of you will run into is, on the one hand, this is actually a new thing, that a new distinction Scott has shared with me today, certainly, is understanding part of the barrier might be a lack of a deliverable on their part on these other things that you as the business owner understand are higher value, but may or may not feel perhaps as immediately satisfying and gratifying to your team, unless you make that very, very clear. The other challenge I suspect some of you are going to run into, and that some of your team might run into, is not so much a skill set, but it's more of a mindset. And that is an emotional belief that what I do is unique and special, and I alone can do that thing. And the space I really want to make for you is to acknowledge that that's probably true for certain key things, but it's probably a lot less things than you think that it is. And the more time you spend doing those things in your zone of genius, the more opportunities you make, because the more money you'll be making, the more impact you'll be making, the better your business will be, the better your ability to be highly creative is going to be. So if anybody's listening to this and you are listening because you're a good listener and you listen to all these, but you're not totally sold yet because you feel like, oh, but I genuinely can't outsource a lot of things, I just want to say with so much gentleness, but so much firmness, I think that's something to believe. I think you're incorrect. And I think that suggests you just haven't thought about this correctly yet. And I want to say that's okay. And I really want to push against that thought, because that's not true. And in fact, if you look at entrepreneurship broadly, largely what the job is constantly thinking of the thing and then learning to replace yourself. And if right now, if there's some real limits and things on your business that you're for certain that nobody else can do as good as you, I just think that's an interesting thing. And we're on a podcast, so I can't help you here, but I'd be love to asking some gentle, open-ended questions here and pick and prod, and just invite you to question how true that is.
Yeah. And
Yeah, Scott, anything else you want to share with the
well,
listeners there?
I want to put a huge
Dog pile
exclamation
on
point. Yeah,
that.
because that was me. No one's going to make the content I want. And here's what I learned, because content was my big thing, and then podcasting was my next thing, and then now my VAs run my VA business, which is phenomenal. So um but what I learned is that it's not that they can do better than me out of the gates, because typically they won't, but it's get them that baseline. And then the next time say, well, I want it a little more like this. Then the next time, a little more like this, and a little more like this, and a little more. So within like 2 months, yes, there's a time that it takes. But when 2 months, they're doing it better than I ever could have done it, because they're bringing their own skill set. And then I'm pushing my view and the way I like to see it when it comes to branding, imagery, all that stuff. Now they come to the table with, I'm like, oh my, I could have never imagined that. That thing is 20 times better than I could have ever done. And so there's this process that it takes. And I think it's really important to not only say who this is for, but say who it's not for. Because there's just as much friction on our end if we get somebody that's just not as good.
Sure.
It's not for somebody looking for a magic bullet. If you think you're going to hire us and then we're going to be able to do everything for you and you're not going to have to work again, you're wrong. Even when you have an employee on site and they do stuff, a lot of time you're looking at it and saying, ooh, let's change this or that. There's still that element to this. And so I like people to know that this isn't push it all off on them and it's just
Mhm.
going to magically fix everything for me. I'm going to step into the process, which we coach you through. We have calls and we have training, and we're going to take as much friction away, especially with those plug and play SOPs. Those are just boom, we're off to the races. But other things, it's a process. But if I were to tell you, if you're always doing these things, and even if you're trying to save a little money and haven't hired people for all these things, social media seems to be the biggest one. If in 3 months I could tell you that you would be comfortable enough to it where it's like 5 minutes a day for you, would you do the work? And the answer almost exclusively is yes, because usually those things are just absolutely energy stealers. So if you're not willing to step into a process, learn the process, engage, and go through some of the work. Now, it doesn't have to be the owner; it can be a manager.
Mhm.
Um, like you guys did that. It was wonderful, great experience. Um, just evaluate your mindset before stepping into something like this, because there's still work to be done.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a great point, right? Because it's still management, it's still training. The
Yeah,
metaphor that I think is useful here, it comes from the study of effective forecasting. And this is a particular branch of psychology that essentially posits that humans are not so good at predicting how they're going to feel about things. And the classic example is most humans will choose a trick knee for life than breaking their leg. Right. And I'm certainly not suggesting this is as painful as breaking a leg, but what happens is people oftentimes will tolerate the devil they know than having the discomfort of growing and learning and going through and that's like a worst case scenario. I think is a few months of a challenge situation. That is the
yeah,
worst case scenario. And again, that's not just, I think, for VAs, that's also for delegating broadly, because you see,
absolutely.
it is true. You are correct. Right now, it will take you more time and a lot of effort for a product that's not as good. However, to give another metaphor, this is equivalent to, not to get too dark and morbid, this is equivalent to staying in a relationship that you're unhappy with. You don't like each other. You should break up. It's going to be painful for a couple weeks, but then ultimately, one day you're going to wake up and you're going to have that big exhalation. You're going to be like, I'm not alone. I'm free, is what I am. So I wish a divorce in your future. No, not literally divorce, gentle reader, gentle listener. Awesome, Scott. Thank you so much for your time. Is there anything else you feel inspired to share, any closing thoughts, or alternatively, you can just give us contact information about where people can find you, though we will be linking out to this in the podcast
Yeah,
notes.
first of all, just check the podcast notes. I know that there's going to be a link there. If you want to check out, it's vasforgyms.com. It's just going to direct you to a 10-minute call, which is the same thing Mark's going to have for you. So you can get some of the questions answered, real basic questions of what some of the friction points are for you, what things that you're struggling with and would like some help with. But mostly, just hop on the phone. It's literally a 10-minute investment. We do 2 calls. We just find out if we're a good fit for you. And if we're not, we're going to give you a solution. One of those solutions can actually be a guide on how to hire your own VA, because it is not easy. And even with the guide, it's not easy, but we try to reduce some friction for some folks. but then you're managing, you're hiring, it's all the
Yeah.
same thing over again. So we will give you something out of that, but really it's just like, hey, are you right? And then the next call will be a deep dive. Like what are some of the pain points? And we'll just really answer whether we can do that kind of stuff for you or not, and really kind of paint that picture for you. So that's it. And we have a group on Facebook, vasforgyms.com. I do a live every week. We're even talking about like,
I thought you said you had a Groupon, like a
oh, sorry.
Groupon. Like, wow,
No,
you're
I said
really
the
going
wrong
there,
thing. We
Scott.
have a Facebook group. No, we don't do Groupons. I hope you don't either.
New idea, brand new strategy. You've never heard of it.
Yes. How to get the worst people in our business. No, we have a group, theaceforgyms.com. Just give you a little bit of a piece of work of, or an idea of what we do and the interaction with our clients. So
fantastic. Awesome. Scott, thank you so much. So listeners, please go ahead, click those show notes. Full disclosure, we're going to put in a little link in there that we do get a small commission. So I want to be very upfront about that.
Very
but
important.
If you are concerned that I'm being a shill, you can absolutely go and Google it, and which is silly because you pay the same money, but then we wouldn't get any of it. But if that's how you want to do it, one, that's strange. But two, I hope to still garner the social capital of a service you're very satisfied with, which will then make you think nice things about me. All right, friends, thank you so much. Please be sure to subscribe. Please be sure to leave a comment, rate us on the old iTunes. And if you are not subscribed for the email newsletter at businessforunicorns.com, what is wrong with you? Go there right now. Sign up for it. I write from my heart every week. I think very useful and at times guffawing, laugh out loud content to help you have more success in your training gym. Scott, thanks for coming on. Friends, have a great day, and we'll catch you on the next podcast. Well, I hope you loved today's podcast, and forgive me, I want to remind you one more time, if you haven't already done so, head over to businessforunicorns.com, click the button, and get your free self-assessment, the ultimate training gym owner report card. I promise you're going to want to dig into this resource and get the support you need, finding crystal clarity on exactly where you need to be focusing to create a life and a business you love.